My name is Tim from Fury Sports YouTube, and today we will be discussing NFL injury reports going into Week 5. Let's go. The NFL is currently being ruled with injuries as heading into Week 5, there's many people who are wondering what their starting roster is going to look like with main players being injured. So today, that's what I'm going to be discussing. I'm going to be discussing what teams have the greatest injuries and how or what their starting roster is going to look like heading into Week 5. Starting off in the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills have many players who are out, starting with Dorian Williams, who is a starting linebacker. He's out with a knee injury. They have in total 5 defensive players, and one of them being their star edge rusher, Ed Oliver, who's out with an ankle injury. He's questionable to return, and we don't know what's going to happen with him. Defensive tackle TJ Sanders, also on the Bills, is out with a knee injury. He is questionable to return. Linebacker Matt Milano is out with a pectoral injury. He's also questioned to return. And cornerback Dorian Strong is completely out with a neck injury. So, heading into Week 5, the Buffalo Bills defense doesn't seem to be strong as one of their star linebackers in Matt Milano is questionable. We don't know if he will be seen. And also their other linebacker, Dorian Williams, is completely out. So we definitely won't see him in Week 5. Offensive lineman Spencer Brown on the Bills is also questionable to return with a calf injury. So obviously the Buffalo Bills are suffering from injuries a lot. The defensive line is going to struggle in Week 5 against the Patriots, who also are dealing with a couple of injuries, but not too many crucial injuries at that. And we don't know if we will see a good defensive hold from the Buffalo Bills. Offense still looks good, but if Spencer Brown can get back, then maybe Josh Allen will succeed in beating the New England Patriots. And staying in the AFC East, we will go to those same New England Patriots who are suffering from all defensive injuries. The first one being outside linebacker K'Lavon Chaisson, who's out with a knee injury. Milton Williams, who was a defensive tackle, he's questionable with an ankle injury. Cornerback Carlton Davis III is questionable to return with an illness. And linebacker Jelani Tavai is questionable to return with a calf injury. Now, although the Patriots have not been doing good so far, we never know what we can expect from a team like the Patriots. Obviously, they are not really the favorite coming into this team. They are currently sitting at 2-2, while the Buffalo Bills are 4-0. So, if you want to see an upset, tune in. It's live on NBC Sunday night at 8 o'clock. The next team we will be discussing is the Miami Dolphins, who aren't suffering with too many injuries, but very key injuries. Of course, everybody is aware of the injury from Tyreek Hill that happened September 25th, but there's also more wide receiver injuries. Cedric Wilson being one of those wide receivers who is out with a knee injury. Cornerback Storm Duck is also out with an ankle injury. Now, although the Dolphins are 1-3, they face a very heavy-handed team in the Carolina Panthers, who are also loaded with injuries. But with one of their main wide receiving stars being out with a completely traumatic leg injury, it begs the question of what's next for the Dolphins. That'll be discussed in a later video, though. But for now, let's go to the next team. The New York Jets are sitting at 0-4 with 3 injuries on their hands. Cornerback Michael Carter II, who is out with a concussion, edge rusher Jermaine Johnson, who is questionable to return with an ankle injury, and running back Kene N, who is out with a hamstring injury. It quite literally can't get worse for the New York Jets. They're sitting at 0-4 coming into Sunday against a heavy-loaded Dallas Cowboys team who are still missing their star receiver. But they did good last week, so I expect them to do good this week. The New York Jets are still struggling, though. Even though they took a loss to the Miami Dolphins, it was a bad loss, but we never know what will happen. Maybe they might have a bounce-back game, and maybe they might still do bad. But the question is, what's next for the New York Jets as well, which will also be discussed in a later video. That's going to wrap up the AFC East. Onto the AFC North. The first team I will be discussing in the AFC North is the Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals only have 2 injuries so far, one of them being wide receiver Charlie Jones, who is out with an Achilles injury, and the other being defensive end Shamar Stewart, who's out with an ankle injury. This shouldn't really affect their team that much. They're only 2-2, so they're even 500. But with them losing a star defensive tackle in Shamar Stewart, this could change how their defense plays. The next team in the division I will be discussing is none other than the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have much less to lose. They're doing better than the Jets, but they're doing somehow better than the Ravens. The Cleveland Browns are only suffering from 3 injuries. Greg Newsome II, who's out with a hamstring injury, offensive tackle Jack Conklin, who's questionable to return with an elbow injury, and defensive tackle Mike Hall Jr., who's out with a knee injury. They've just named Dylan Gabriel as starting quarterback, so maybe that could be a cry for help. The Cleveland Browns are honestly doing normal for their team. They are 1-3, which is somehow the same as the Baltimore Ravens, but they've also given up a lot of points throughout the games. After week 5, I don't expect more injuries, but I do expect another loss as they do play the Minnesota Vikings, who are currently on a roll. But let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are suffering from so many injuries, it's impossible to count. Well, it really isn't, but let's just get started. And to add a twist to it, I'm doing it in a lightning round. For the players ruled out for week 5. First off, we've got Chidobe Awuzie. Second, Marlon Humphrey. Lamar Jackson follows, Emory Jones is after him, and Patrick Ricard is out. Inside linebacker Roquan Smith is out with a hamstring injury. Kyle Hamilton follows him with a groin injury. Odafe Owe, Ronnie Stanley, and Devontae Walker are all questionable to return. That wraps up a lightning round, a really quick one at that, but it does affect the Baltimore Ravens, who are obviously missing their star quarterback Lamar Jackson. And that could drastically change the scenario of the Baltimore Ravens, who are currently 1-3. But that's it for the AFC North. It's time to go to the NFC side. We're starting with the NFC East. First team we'll be discussing is the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are currently sitting at 1 win, 2 losses, and a tie. That's correct. You heard that correctly. The Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers are the only 2 teams who have a tie currently in the 2025 NFL season. The Dallas Cowboys are missing a lot of their star players, which might have to call for another lightning round. Let's start with the players who are completely ruled out for week 5. On the offensive side, we've got Tyler Booker, Tyler Guyton, CeeDee Lamb, and KaVontae Turpin. They are all ruled completely out, involving something with their leg. Tyler Guyton has a concussion. On the defensive side, you've got Malik Hooker and Kalen Carson. Let's not forget about Kenneth Murray and Marshawn Nealon, who are also questionable to return. Taylor Smith, Miles Sanders, Jonathan Mingo all follow the questionable returns. They all follow up with questionable returns. But regardless of that, the Dallas Cowboys are not doing too well. They've lost a couple of close games that didn't deserve to be lost, and obviously they just tied against the Green Bay Packers in a revenge game for Micah Parsons. They don't really have much to improve on. They need to work on getting star players such as KaVontae Turpin and CeeDee Lamb back, and once they can get those players healthy, then they might have a solid chance at winning a couple more games. And now let's go to one of their team rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're a team sitting at 4-0, you don't really have much to worry about. But the Philadelphia Eagles only have one injury that they need to worry about, which is star linebacker Nakobe Dean, who's out with a knee injury. Now, although he hasn't really done much for the team, it still matters because that is one of their star linebackers. Heading into week 5, they're facing the 2-2 Denver Broncos, who they don't really have much to worry about, but they still could give them competition. The next team we will be talking about is the Washington Commanders. Sitting at 2-2, this team also doesn't really have much to worry about. They are a very, very strong, capable team of winning games, but with them losing Terry McLaurin out with a quad injury and Noah Brown out with a groin/knee injury, they don't know what to do. Those are obviously 2 of their star wide receivers, and also them losing offensive guard Sam Cosmi to a knee injury could also drastically change how their offense performs in week 5. Next team is obviously the New York Giants. With the New York Giants obviously not off to a good start, we wonder what's next for them. They're currently sitting at 1-3, which is not too good, but it's also very, very, very bad for a team like the New York Giants. And going into week 5, they only have a couple of injuries on their hands. One of them being Dexter Lawrence, who's ill and questionable to return, Tyrone Tracy Jr., doubtful with a shoulder injury, and Tyler Nubin, who's questionable with a groin injury. The only player who's ruled out is Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, who is out with a hamstring injury. 3 defensive stars on the New York Giants is a very, very bad play by them, but who knows what can happen in week 5, obviously. On the other hand, their offense is doing very well, and it showed with them playing against the Dallas Cowboys. But let's not forget about Malik Nabers tearing his ACL in week 3. But worrying about the running room isn't much, as they've got Cam Skattebo, who's willing to run over anybody and everyone in his way, along with Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson at quarterback. But with Jackson Dart starting last week against the Los Angeles Chargers, who knows what can happen as well. That wraps up the NFC East. Onto the NFC North. This will be the last division of the video because obviously we will have to do a part 2. Starting off with the Detroit Lions, they have 4 players out with injuries. 3 of those players being defensive players, one of them being star linebacker Zach Cunningham, the other being star defensive lineman Alan McNeil, who's out with a knee injury, third being Khalil Dorsey, who has a concussion and a wrist injury, and the fourth person being the running back Sion Vaki, who is out with a groin injury. Forgive me if I pronounced that wrong, by the way. They have Taylor Decker, who is questionable with a shoulder injury, Kirby Joseph, who is questionable with a knee injury. This isn't really a nice sight to see, especially from a team that went all the way to the divisional round last year in the playoffs. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think that the Chicago Bears have any injuries, and I also don't think that the Packers have any injuries. But the Minnesota Vikings are loaded with injuries. 6 players are ruled out for the Minnesota Vikings, one of them being J.J. McCarthy, the rookie, who is ruled out with an ankle injury. 4 of the others being Donovan Jackson, Ryan Kelly, Michael Juergens, and Brian O'Neill, who are all offensive linemen. The last one being Andrew Van Ginkel, who is the star linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings. He is ruled out with a neck injury. But they're questionable to return people, such as Tyler Beatty, who is questionable with a knee injury, fullback CJ Ham, who's also questionable with a knee injury, and Ben Yurosek, who is questionable with, you guessed it, a knee injury. And it turns out the Chicago Bears are loaded with injuries, one of them being Jalen Johnson, who is the star cornerback, TJ Edwards, star linebacker, and Kyler Gordon, who is another star cornerback. One more defensive lineman is Grady Jarrett, who is injured due to a knee injury. Another guy who is questionable to miss this is Darnell Wright. He's out with a right elbow injury. And Colston Loveland, the tight end, has been sidelined with a hip injury. You cannot forget about players like Jonah Jackson, who is an offensive guard, Kieran Gadji, who is an offensive tackle, and Travis Homer, who has also been placed on the IR due to a calf injury. And to wrap up the division, you have the Green Bay Packers, who have multiple injuries, such as Jaden Reed, who broke his collarbone after scoring a touchdown. Tucker Kraft has a tweaked knee that he picked up during practice. He's been checked out and been ruled okay, but that is a scary sight to see. Star players such as Christian Watson, Javon Bullard, and Travis Glover are all injured with different kinds of injuries. Javon Bullard entered week 3 with a concussion, and he's out week 4 and possibly out week 5. Travis Glover was placed on the IR with a shoulder injury, and Christian Watson is currently on the physical unable to perform list with a torn ACL that he got in January. That's going to wrap up this video. I appreciate you guys for sticking around towards the end, and if you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and possibly comment. That's going to wrap it up for today's video. See you guys in part 2. Goodbye. As always, stay furious, and I'll see you guys in part 2.